Okay, great. Good. Okay, I think we'll start with that. Gives us a 5 minutes heads up, and the others can join. Okay, like we had a previous session of the history of religion. This is just a continuation, and this can go into multiple because the subject of religion is so vast. We really cannot cover a lot of things which happened in religion because various people were called with various names. Various places used to call the gods with different names, being the same god. It's not necessary that when I say a such and such person is called with another name in another place, doesn't mean it's a physical person. These were stories incorporated with a little bit of their, you know, culture, and they have made things, but things were inspired. That's what I would like to say. Most of the stories were inspired from certain main characters in which we are going to cover. So I'm trying to cover the main characters through which people were influenced in setting up the religion, basically. So here we have the picture here is of Nimrod, and the tower behind Nimrod is the Tower of Babel. The Bible never mentions who built the Tower of Babel, but most agree that it was Nimrod. Now, Nimrod is not a name. Let me tell you very openly. Nimrod is a is a name called the mighty one or the rebellious person in the Bible. Basically, it's not a name. So we really do in history we cannot connect Nimrod directly. Yeah, who's that? Okay. In history, we cannot directly connect him, though some historians say he is Sargon, he is Gilgamesh. Though Gilgamesh's history, we have the 12 tablets in the museum. So we don't know his real name, but let's go with Nimrod. And below I have written sun god. I'll come to that slowly. Okay, here I have just have a disclaimer just so that we don't get, because some of this information I did take from our various books. I have got PDFs downloaded. I have also got some from the internet. This is just a disclaimer saying that if anyone has any objection with any pictures which are is in this presentation, they can write to me and I'll take it off this presentation. Here we are going to, this is just a summary what we are going to discuss today in part 2. Like last time we said, after the ark settling on the Ararat Mountains, uh, uh, Noah wanted his sons to basically go and fill up the earth as per his God Yahweh's instructions. And there is a mention of how lots were cast for his 3 sons and how he distributed the lands for them. I would also go through a list of places and nations built by Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, these 3 sons of him were known with different names in different parts of the world, and we'll see that soon. I have a slide on Noah's family tree, which I've shown last time, I think, but this is a different one. And I do show the connection how Noah was worshipped as God, and then even his sons were also worshipped as gods later on. The earliest religious books which we see of the Sumerians, I'd like to make a connection that they have confused Noah's story, the Akkadians, and they used to call their gods as El, Enlil, Enki. But if you look at the stories, though their stories are not what is there in the Bible, but it closely resembles to what the Noah story is basically. The only thing is because by the time the Akkadians were there, maybe 400-500 years had passed, and they have confused the stories. We have Nimrod's religion, how the father, mother, and the son worship started. Today you have, the father god, the mother god, and the sun god. This basically also came from the story of Nimrod. This is the second last is Nimrod's death and the worship of the penis. This is a very interesting subject. Very few people have done research on this, but there are a couple of stories which are written in some of the books. Now we cannot really say how far is true, but it connects with the worship of the penis, and I will show it to you as to how it is connected with the modern world also today. And lastly, we come to the subject of Semiramis, who's the wife of Nimrod, the mother of Tammuz. And interestingly, Semiramis was also the wife of Cush and the wife of Tammuz. Now that will be a little confusing, but when we get there, I'll let you know. Now there are two theories for the continental split. Like in my first presentation, which I showed of the flood, I did discuss how the continents were split up. There are two theories which are floating around. One theory is that the continents split up during the time of Noah's flood, when God brought in the flood and it rained for 40 days, 40 nights, and the earth was covered for about 365 days. At that time, the split happened. That is one theory. The second theory was that the nations were split after the fall of Babel. That means when God punishes man that he cannot understand the language, he confused the languages. At that time, there was a split. And that also makes sense because today the story of Babel and the flood is there across the world. Every part where man could not even travel in those days, people knew of the flood. If everyone knew of the flood, there has to be some connection as to how everyone knew the same story. But we really don't know which one happened here. Like I said, the splitting of the continents, this is the first theory which happened. The science also confirms that there was a single continent called Pangaea. And of course, the Indians used to call, because it's like the story of the frog in the well. At that time, most of the Indians, I don't know, they might have done trade, but they did call India as Jambudipa. The word Jambudipa means one whole island. But of course, this was not the name for the world. And the belief is that it did split during Noah's time, like I said. And here is the second theory of the splitting of the continents at the time of Babel. Now, this is a map which shows if the continents were not split up during Noah's flood, then the Pangaea would look like this. And this is the territories which the three sons had. If you could look, Japheth had the northern part, and that's how most of the Russians and all come from him. Ham had the central part, which consists of Africa and all that area, and Shem had the eastern part, basically. This is if the continent did not split up during the flood. And this is a different map which shows if the continent had split up during the flood, then this should be the territory of how, when the lots were cast, the sons had it. Japheth gets the European part, Ham gets the African part, and Shem gets basically the eastern part, basically. Though India doesn't come here, you see India is on the right on the Indus River. So Shem directly did not come to India immediately. At that time, it was instructed to all the three sons that they do not take any a place where they have to settle. They should not make it permanent. They had to settle it, establish, and move on. That was the instruction given to all the three sons, and that's what they did. They basically set up. They kept their sons in charge, and they moved on. Like Ham was given Africa, but Ham moved on to many places. He gave Africa to his son Mizraim, who that's what he call Egypt. Then he moves down. Even Shem moves down to Africa near Ethiopia. So they basically were moving around. They did not stick around in one place. This is a list which I show of basically at the table of nations, where his sons and grandsons, basically which countries they form. This is, you can go. I can give this presentation to whoever wants it after we are done. Like you see, the Japhet is the founder of Greeks and the Aryans of India. Gomer founded Germany basically. Magog, Madai, Javan. I don't know how it is. Javan, I think it's Javan. So there are, you see the Ashkenaz. You have heard about the Ashkenazi Jews. Basically, they come from that area. So here we have Ham at the bottom, Africa, Nubia, southern India, and Egypt. Now, when you say Egypt, basically is Mizra and his son. Then Shem is North Afghanistan, Syria, Israel, and northern India. This is just a map which you can go through when you have the time. Basically, it shows the timeline before the flood and after the flood. Now, this timeline is as per the Christian calculation, which is in reverse of as per the things which have happened in the Bible, and they have come up with a date as to when was the creation date. Basically, because the Bible gives us all the ages of from Adam to Noah. So if you can calculate all of them, you can go get a reverse date as when was the creation date, basically, because the Bible very clearly mentions the flood happens 1600 and I think 25 or 75 years after the creation. So with that, you can add as to when is the creation date. But of course, the scientific world has a different date which runs into millions, and that's a different discussion. Here I have a map of the descendants of Noah, and I would like to just point some few here. You see the Ham, the line of Ham, and you see Cush here. Now we'll be concentrating more on the sons of Ham, who are Cush, Shem, and some of the other here. You see here, there's a name called Rama, and there's a name called Sheba. Now these are the sons of Cush, and these names had a great influence in India, though we are surrounded with a lot of hints of the Old Testament, of basically of Noah's story, but we Indians, we do not connect the dots. But I wish you, after this presentation, you'll really see that there is a lot of information floating around in India which points to the story of Noah. Like I say here, the Cush is known as Kish. Kish was also a place in Mesopotamia which he Kush settles down, and I'll show you some proof on that. The warriors in India were called the Kashtriyas. Basically, they are the tribe who was named after him. Here we have Shem. Shem was known as Bharat in India. In Buddhism, if anyone has read Buddhism, there is something called as Shaman and Bhaman. There are two sects in the Tripitaka, which is the book of Buddha, and they have Shaman and Bhaman. The name Shaman also tallies much to how they have got this name from Shem. And in Tamil literature, you have Shaman Kaman, and in the Hindu literature, of course, he was known as Bharat. These are some of the charts which I have put before, just for. Okay, here I do show now how after the flood, the Greeks used to worship Noah as Janus. Basically, he had three faces. Now, these things were worshipped between 1500 and 900 BC. And these three-headed, four-headed statues must have influenced the Buddhism religion here. Basically, Buddha was formed, Buddha basically in India was around 800 BC. Now, when you say three heads, it is not physically three heads. They are the attributes of a person. That means you're trying to say that Noah was so good that he had these qualities in him. The 3 to 4 faces show the attributes and the quality of a person, basically. And that's how the people at that time created statues showing the quality of them. The same thing was there in Buddha, but Buddha's statues had little more different meaning because and we will cover these stories of different religion at a different discussion. I will not go in deep now, but they are not the same faces. You see here, the three faces are not Buddha. One is Buddha, one is Vajrapani, and one is Dharmapani or something. They for to understand Buddhism, we have to understand how the sects of Buddhism broke up after Buddha's death, and we'll come to that later on. It's not a part of this discussion today, but I just wanted to show that how these things were copied, and the three heads were also shown in Buddhism. And here we have on the right side a Babylonic god called Tiamat with four heads. Basically, this was in 2000 to 1600 BC, very quite old. So the concept of showing the gods with three and four heads is not only from India. These things were copied basically. And I'll come to that dates later on. This is a statue which is there in the, I think in the London Museum, this one, God Tiamat. Here, lastly, we show Brahma with four faces. And there's a lot of information I have gathered now, and did realize that these stories were not as old as shown. This is between the 8th century and 14th century AD. Now, when I say AD, it's after death. That means 14th century, you know that in 16th century, the Mughals came and all that. So it is quite recent. 8th century is where Sankaracharya was there. And we'll get into this discussion when we come to that subject of Hinduism. But I just wanted to show the Brahma, how he has the three heads, basically. Here I'm showing a picture of Ezekiel's dream in the Bible. What I wanted to show with this slide is that the concept of showing God with four heads is not new. Now, I'm not saying this is God. This is just a vision which Ezekiel got of the angels which came to meet him. Basically, this is described in the Bible. And I just wanted to show it that the concept of four head is not something which belongs to one area. Now let's get to Ham. Ham was one, we really don't know whether Ham was the youngest son because in the Bible, in some places it is written that Shem is the oldest, and in some places it is written Japheth is the oldest. But Ham is definitely the youngest of all. And he was really not the cursed one, but there is a story of how Ham was cursed by Noah and for seeing his nakedness, and that's a different discussion of what is the meaning of nakedness. We'll get to in some other story, but it is his son Canaan who was basically cursed, and that's what I write here on the top, which is Genesis 9:22. Ham, father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. The meaning of this is very different, and we'll discuss this another time. Today, our connection I wanted to make is Ham with India, basically. What is this, running out of time? Yeah, Victor, is this time based?
No, I don't. It's not my meeting, right? It's you set up the meeting,
No,
right?
no, I just took it without. Is this time based? I don't know. But
No,
anyway,
no,
we continue. If it stops, then you just open one and we'll jump
no,
on
no.
to
It
it.
won't.
And if you have started this link on your own, you can start again once this is over.
Oh, I didn't know that this was
Tell
time.
everybody to join in the same link. Just go back in the link.
Oh, okay. In the meanwhile, Victor, can you create your one with this? Because I did not know that this was time based. I'll keep continuing, but you just create one.
You don't need that. You just go back to the link and tell everybody to join again. Once you join, everybody can join again.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Here we have Ham. He was known as Kam, and Kwam was the Hebrew name. And like I said, in India he was known as Kaman. And here these are some of the things which are worshipped today in Tamil. Ham was basically known in southern India because that is where he came, and we South Indians are the dark people who are the descendants of Ham. And even today in Tamil Nadu, they have a lovers festival, which is called Kaman Viva. Kaman Viva means it's a common marriage where people come together and the names are picked up and the woman get married. You see at the right side, I've shown a picture. They use his name as Kaman Viva. It is practiced mostly in most of the southern states. Here I say Kaman Pandigai. It's a festival of Kamadeva, which is also celebrated in Sri Lanka and all that. And there are some poetries which is in Tamil Nadu which are called the Sangam poetry. Some of you might have heard about the Sangam poetry. They are the oldest literature in Tamil. And when I did a little research on the Sangam poetry, I realized that the old name was not Sangam, it was Kankam. And there too you have Camp's name there, basically. Kamadeva's name there in the Kankam songs. And I did download some of the poetry of the Sangam poetry, and they were all related to Kam. Like I said, the Gulf of Kambata also gets his name from Kam. The Kama Sutra was, of course, derived from him. And below, I show some pictures of Kamadeva depicted in Indian mythology. You know, there he's shooting a arrow to Shiva when Shiva was meditating, and that's how Shiva kills him, and all that stories. On the right side, you see that Kam in India is always shown sitting on a parrot with a bow. And basically, this concept was copied from the Greek mythology of Cupid and Eros. That's their love god. You see at the right side, Cupid sitting on a sparrow. Basically, here he has the wings, but they don't show Kamadeva with wings, but he has an arrow too. Oh, one thing I just forgot to. Okay, I wanted to show one more thing. How Holi is celebrated in Tamil Nadu. Basically, it is celebrated at Masimagam, and this is basically also related to Kama. And it was not called Holi. They call it with a different name. They have also a function where I write here that a papaya tree is used as a Kama, and every children go to every house asking Kama Irukana. Irukana means Kaman at home. And this concept is being going on. And he was worshipped in India quite some time till Buddhism came in and wiped out most of the memory of Ham or Kam. Here I show basically this is on a coffin, and for most of you who don't know who Dionysus, he is one of the characters who has defeats Ham in India. He comes to India. This is mentioned in the book of Jubilees where he attacks India. And here you have a nice on a Roman coffin carved very well on this. On the left side, you see Dionysus sitting on two leopards. Basically, the world always says that the story of Dionysus, who is called the god of wine, is a myth. But you have this on coffins printed that these things happened so long back that these are not recorded in any books because there were no paper at that time. Anything had to be written at those time, I think, had to be written on stone. And at that time, people did not even write it on stones. These stonework was done way later in the Roman time. This depicts his victory over in India. You see, he has all elephants and lions and all. He's carrying. This is a story where he's showing his victory over Ham in India. You have Japheth, the eldest son. Japheth is known as the father of the white people. And it is said that the Purus and the Kurus, the tribes which came in from the north, who became the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were basically the tribe from Japheth, from the north. They were white-skinned people. Japheth was worshipped in other places, like in Greek as Lepidus. He was also known as Jupiter. In Rome, you have the Jupiter god. The planet Jupiter also was named after him. The Indians probably called him Prajapati, because Pra means father, Japati is Japhet. So Prajapati, now we don't have real hard evidence onto it, but probably it was Japhet who they called Prajapati. And here you have a statue here, Brahma Prajapati. Now this, let's not confuse for a Hindu god. This is basically a Buddhist. We'll come to that later on of how these things were taken into Hindu mythology later on. Like I write here, these things happened such a long time back that Indians were not aware of the Indian Valley. We Indians, this is very true. We Indians were not aware of the Indus Valley civilization. Alexander the Great. You'll be surprised that the Indians never knew about Alexander nor Porus. And then Ashoka and the Gupta Empire were not known to us till the British excavated and brought this information to the people of India. And this is a very hard fact. You know, when we say that we are Indian mythology is so old, and sometimes I hear things of saying of 100 years and all that, which is really fairy tales. We did not know our own history. Even today, Indians don't know what happened in Indus Valley civilization. We couldn't understand the scripts of the Indus Valley civilization in the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. But we talk that our history is 10,000, 15,000 years ago, when we did not know what happened in India. The reason we come to know of Alexander the Great is because after 200 years of 300 years of Alexander dying, in Greeks, someone wrote a biography of Alexander, and that's how we know the story of Alexander, basically. Anyway, Japheth was also the founder of the Kuru and the Kuru tribe, like I mentioned, who migrated from the North Bactria side in northern China, migrated into India. They are mentioned in the epic books of India, Indians as Pauravas and Kauravas. That's the story basically on the Hindu traditions. Then we have the last son, Shem, who we call the Bharat of India. I think we have covered a lot about him. And here I show one verse of the Manusmriti, mentioning the term Narayan. Of course, I give this to Kumar. I've taken it from him too, where Narayan is described as, of course, Nar is the water, and Ayan is to lie. And that means the one who lies on the water. And this is mentioned in our book in Genesis 1:2. In the beginning, my spirit was hovering over the waters. So basically, a lot of things in the Rig Veda, if you read it very carefully, it ties up with the our Bible stories, basically what you call the Torah stories, the Genesis. Most of them tie up with Genesis, and we'll discuss that when we come to that subject of the other religions. Now, according to the book of Jubilees, now if someone will ask me, Glady, where are you telling this, from your own story? Some of the stories are not, I'm not making them up. If there is no proof for it, I will tell you that this is basically